It's November 13th, 2001, Tuesday Night Talks. Good evening, everybody. Good to see you here. I really have very little idea what this new format of talk is going to be like. There was a lot of information that we passed out during the How It Works class. And as information, it's essentially useless. And it's an indication of the direction in which to go, but when you are experiencing the consciousness that those talks were really about, then your life changes. But until that time, it's really just information. And it is an important first step. Joel used to talk about the letter of truth, and that's why we read the books like Joel books, and that's why we study metaphysics, which is essentially what the How It Works classes was just the basic foundations of metaphysics. And that's the letter of truth, and that hopefully shakes up our thinking enough that the other possibilities open to us, and maybe it breaks us out of our rigorous analytical mind enough that we can start having intuitive flashes and start opening our minds and having some real contact with the experience. But the power is in the consciousness, and you need to get it. We need to get it at the level of in our consciousness much deeper than the words, than the intellect. So that's why we're doing these talks. The real thing that prompted me to do these is to provide a place where we can come together every other Tuesday night and get back into the consciousness that was behind all those talks. And so this will be talks, a little bit of talk maybe, and certainly it's a workshop if it wants to be that, or questions and answers, or it can take any form it wants to take. The important thing is that we're all here together in the consciousness, and all of us know varying amounts of truth, and all of us have had the experience of varying amounts of truth. And so we all share in the consciousness, and it's much stronger than if we are by ourselves. So, and the other thing that I've discovered is that whenever we have a class like the ones we just had, it's very unsettling to the newer people, because it tears out a lot of the props that people have had their lives propped up on, have had their beliefs propped up on. And you don't get anything new. What has to happen always is that the old beliefs have to be thrown away to make room for the new understandings to come in. So there's always a period of discomfort when you're recognizing that the old beliefs don't work, and you don't yet have the experience that gives you the new consciousness that does work. Unfortunately for you guys, my first guru was Rajneesh, who was the world's greatest pot stirrer. and spent an hour and a half every day just destroying every belief that everybody had in the entire group. He went around and essentially made sure that nobody held any of their beliefs as special or sacred or holy. He used to pick on Mother Teresa, which is a great one for people to feel all warm and fuzzy about, and Mahatma Gandhi. He used to pick on Mahatma Gandhi, and he just picked on everything as part of tearing down dependencies. And he was my first guru. And Robert Adams is an absolute annihilator of everything. So when you hang out with me and get into my consciousness, my first purpose is to me it seems like I'm trying to make everything perfectly clear. But of course that's not what's happening. What's going on is that I'm tearing stuff down and leaving you with nothing, which is the way it works. There's the Zen story of the I guess he was a philosophy teacher from the local university who came to the Zen master and asked, he said, teach me Zen. And the Zen master said, let me give you some tea. And he put a cup in front of the guy and he started pouring tea. And he poured tea until the cup was full. And he just kept pouring, and the tea flooded over and started flooding over everywhere. And finally the professor said, stop, you can't do that. The teacup's already full. And the Zen master said, yes, and so are you already full. We'll have to empty you before we can give you Zen. And of course, I assumed that the professor probably left in a huff because he certainly didn't want to give up his PhD and the years of work it took to get to his position and everything. What's been coming up for me for the past 2 weeks is that we all go to these classes and learn this stuff. I shouldn't say we all, but mostly we all to some extent, or mostly we come to these classes and learn this stuff because we want it to make our lives better. We want it to make our lives conform more to how we think things ought to be. And the thing I've been sharing in lots of meetings and saying a lot over the past few months is that the greatest burden that anybody carries, that anybody can possibly carry, is the knowledge of how things ought to be. So we'll talk a bit about that for openers, and then we'll go anywhere you want to. We all are brought up, taught, conditioned to know how things ought to be. And of course, we're conditioned to a different set of how things ought to be than people in a different community or a different country or a different part of the world are conditioned to be. So how things ought to be according to our conditioning is different from how things ought to be according to these people or those people or other people. Nonetheless, we are absolutely conditioned to know how things ought to be. I remember my mother used to try to convince me to be a good Christian because she would tell me, that half a billion people can't be wrong. And I, of course, asked her about Buddhism. How about those 2 billion people? Can they be wrong? She was conditioned to think that our way was right, and they're conditioned to think their way is right. And it's all conditioning. And there's nothing wrong with thinking we know what's right, except that it is what causes all of our discomfort and all of our misery. Because things aren't the way we think they ought to be, and they never will be the way we think things ought to be, the way they ought to be. Rajneesh said something which I paraphrase. Essentially what he said is that God's will is what's happening, and my will is what I want to happen. And the difference is pain. And the degree of the pain is how far apart what I want and what's happening are, multiplied by how badly I want it my way, or how invested I am in having it my way. And that brings, there's real clarity in that. That certainly is true, and feel free to take that with you and study it everywhere you go. Whenever you are in any experience, feel free to check that out, and you don't need to make it as heavy as God's will and my will, but make it as, what I want and how things are. I like the God's will and my will because that's the perennial question in AA, what's God's will and what's my will? The answer is God's will is what's happening and your will is what you want. But if you think about it, whenever you're in a situation, what's happening is what's happening, and you have what you want. And if you want something different from what's happening, you're uncomfortable, you're in pain, you've got a problem. If I want the sun to come up in the east tomorrow, it's going to work out fine and I'm not going to have a problem. If I want the sun to come up in the west tomorrow, I've got a problem. It's just that simple. And the sun is going to come up exactly where the sun comes up, and it's absolutely uninterested in what I want. But the fact that I have set up a want has introduced for me problems. The difficulty is that we don't know what's going to happen. We always think, well, what I'll do is get my will in line with God's, and then there won't be any pain. But God's will is generally unpredictable. In the case of the sun, it's fairly predictable. But in general, as far as how things ought to turn out, or how my life should turn out, or what's going to happen tomorrow, or whether it's going to be sunny or rainy, or whether I'm going to get a job opportunity, or all these things, those things are absolutely unpredictable. So I can't predict what God's will is going to be. So how can I keep my will and God's will from being different and causing pain? But there's only one way I can do that, and that is to stop having a will of my own. The only way I can avoid wanting something that doesn't happen is to not want anything. That's sort of the foundation of a lot of very high, clear spiritual paths, and paths at all levels. Actually, that's a very common thread that we all seem to ignore as we try to get our will in line with God's, or learn metaphysical principles so that we can force the outcome to appear the way we want it to be, and things like that. Jesus said, take no thought for tomorrow, what you will eat or what you will drink or what you will wear. For all these things will be given to you. And he's essentially saying, don't have a plan, watch it unfold. And he said again, keep your mind stayed on God, and all these things will be added unto you. And by that he means, work on the spiritual consciousness and watch your picture unfold. Now, all the metaphysics is not wrong. All the stuff we talked about is not wrong. It certainly is true that as your consciousness rises, the picture will change. But that's not the fundamental point. The whole thing, the whole thing will change right now if we can stop right now having a plan. I love Steve Lamb's comment, show me a drunk in the gutter with one eye open, and I'll show you a man who has a plan. And that's all of us. We have a plan. Buddha's teaching was based on 4 noble truths. And the first of Buddha's noble truths is that human life contains suffering. In fact, I wrote them down here. Human life contains the element of suffering. And the reason it contains the element of suffering is, his second noble truth is that the suffering is caused by desire. What he's saying is that there's suffering in human life because we desire things. We want it to be this way and it turns out to be that way. We want this and we don't get it. We have this and don't want to lose it, and it does happen. Or we have this and we don't want to lose it, and so we suffer because we're afraid of losing it. So on and on because of that desire. The desire introduces suffering. The third truth is to end suffering, one must give up desire. And that's what I said just a few minutes ago. If you want to prevent the difference between your will and what's happening, you have to drop your will. And the fourth one is to do this, one must relinquish all attachments. So this is very hard to do, it seems, but it's the only sure path to a comfortable life. Life without suffering. Barbara Mull, the source of all the script and kid and relationship work, says very early in her kid work, or maybe even before the kid work, but on one of those early tapes, she says, she asks her students to make 4 lists. And this is really a good exercise. You make a list of everything you love, and make a list of everything you hate, and make a list of everything you fear, and make a list of everything you desire. Okay? And these 4 lists are the things you're attached to, and these 4 lists are the things that are causing all your suffering. These 4 lists are the things which are keeping you human. Buddha doesn't say it, but what goes on here is that when you drop all attachments and drop all desires, then what can happen is that the I sense, the I want this, I need that, I this, I that, the I sense diminishes as you drop attachments and desire. And when the I sense is gone, when the ego is gone, then you're in the realization that Buddha was in. Then you have Buddha mind, or Christ consciousness, or whatever you want to call it. Then you're experiencing the Tao if you're a Taoist. When you give up the attachments and the desires stop, then the structure that holds the personal ego diminishes, and when that is quiet, we can have the experience of of what's real, what really is, and it's very blissful, and it's very serene. So Barbara would say, if we can, that all the things on those lists are the things which are keeping you in your humanhood, is the way she would say it, rather than allowing you to go into God consciousness. Humanhood and God consciousness is the same as suffering, and Buddhahood is the same as humanhood and Christhood and Christ consciousness. They're all the same word, they're all the same, all of them know the same thing. So those lists are a good exercise, because that's sort of a way of taking our own pulse and seeing where we're at. Of course, the same thing may be on several lists. The lists are not exclusive. Often we love, hate, and fear the same thing. Typically, we don't desire that one. But so those lists are a real good way. See, if you approach it this way, then all the energy goes out of trying to achieve an understanding that will allow you to fix your life, or that will allow you to achieve a metaphysical understanding that will make the world appear better to you. All this stuff goes away right from the scratch. You can go in there directly by going at by looking at your desires and your attachments. If you can start right there and analyze those, it's sort of like a short route to finding serenity, giving up those. The practical difficulty, of course, is that our kids, to the extent that we have kid going on, our kid is not going to give up these attachments, because our kid thinks these things are survival issues rather than unfortunate attachments. So this is why Barbara was led to bring forth the script and the kid work, because that's essentially the way we do the work that's necessary to empty those lists. The Zen master Sosan also said the same thing. He said it differently. That's that sign that's up there on the wall. The thing I love, this guy was the 6th Zen patriarch, and he wrote this thing that went on for 20 times that much stuff at least. And the first time I saw it, I read that much of it, and I haven't read the rest of it yet. I can't imagine why he had anything else to say. It starts out by saying the great way is not difficult for those who have no preferences. And that's, at that point he could have got, there was nothing else to say at this point. The great way is the infinite way, is the Buddha mind, is the Christ consciousness, and it's that simple. The great way is not difficult for those who have no preferences. I'll go ahead and say what's up there. When love and hate are both absent, along with desires and fear, everything becomes clear and undisguised. And what that means is that we're quiet enough that we can see what's really happening. And then comes the killer. Make the smallest distinction, however, and heaven and earth are sent infinitely apart. If you want to see the truth, hold no opinion for or against. The struggle of what one likes and what one dislikes is the disease of the mind. And I have no idea why the guy babbled on after this point, but that's the whole thing. Heaven and hell are separated by our own mind and our own attitude. One more Zen story. A whose master had been killed. He's now a Ronin, a masterless samurai, and he has no purpose except to find out who killed his master and to kill that. And he's, of course, charging around Japan, and he's in a great deal of pain and misery over this, and he's finding no peace, and he's in great turmoil, and he runs into a Zen master, and he sees that the man is obviously a serene man, and he says to the Zen master, he says, tell me the difference between heaven and hell. And the Zen master says, you fool, you coward, haven't you got anything better to do than run around trying to kill people or approach Zen masters, and he proceeds to start berating him, and the samurai grabs his sword and pulls it out like this, and the Zen master says, here is the gate to hell. And the guy says, oh yeah. And the Zen master says, here's the gate to heaven. Okay? So that's the difference. All here. So that's the biggest secret to eliminating suffering or getting rid of the distinction between heaven and hell. So let's use the rest of the time to talk about anything that anybody wants to talk about, either from the class or from this or from anything else. Anything that anybody wants to bring up. We'll run for the full hour at least, I think. And that's enough out of me. Yeah.
Well, okay, this thing, this list of everything you love, is that everything or everyone? Is it everyone? I mean, we love each other, or how does that work?
Yeah, that's always a question that comes up. Talking about human love, you as a person loving people, and human love invariably brings with it great fear for the person, the concern for the person, attachment to their well-being, attachment to their being in your life, concern about them, all these things. And yeah, that is a source of suffering. The fact is, if it's God's love flowing through you, it's a whole different experience. Human love is very local and very personal, and it does include the people you love. Not that it's love in the sense of wanting to hold and possess and take hostages, that kind of love. God's love is quite a different thing. God's love as expressed through people is quite a different thing. This is not, certainly the people you feel compassion for don't belong on the list. But the point is the ones that, usually love, usually when we say we love somebody, there's a lot of what we want from them. And those people belong on your list.
So maybe like unconditional love?
Unconditional love is God love, yeah. That's a different thing.
So maybe your husband belongs on the list, but your children don't.
Yeah, quite possibly. Quite possibly. Robert and Rajneesh both certainly loved everybody. But if somebody came or went in their life, it made no difference to them. Robert could care less. Robert clearly loved me. But when I didn't follow him to Arizona, not a ripple in his consciousness, because there was no personal Robert to have a ripple. So that kind of thing. But the love was huge.
When you say to give these up, how do you do that? I mean, is there
See them for what they are.
the okay. How are we going to make them?
That's always the hardest thing. You can't give a good answer to that. What I know from my own experience is that to see something clearly absolutely removes it. But seeing something clearly doesn't mean understanding it completely intellectually. Seeing it clearly means all the way to the bottom of the littlest kid. Okay? But I know that if you see something clearly, it breaks it like that. So if you clearly see your relationship and for example, with somebody that you think you love, and label it correctly, see it for what it is, label it for correctly, and see, how it's tying you to your humanhood. The point is that these things tie you to your humanhood and to your ego, to the I want. If I want you in my life, or if I don't want you in my life, I'm reinforcing the I. And it's that's the whole thing. To the extent that I fear, I'm reinforcing the I. To the extent that I love, I'm reinforcing the I. To the extent that I hate, I'm reinforcing the I. Always, if I want or I don't want, or all those I is reinforcing the I. What it's doing is it's holding me here separate from God. If I could see the truth of the situation from God's viewpoint, if I could see the from cosmic consciousness viewpoint, then none of that would matter, because what I would see is that all there is God, and all our little stories about what's happening have no relationship to the reality, and it's all love, and nothing's going on. And if I could see that, then none of these things would come up. None of that's happening. Nobody was ever born. Nobody ever dies. Joel says this over and over. Robert says this over and over. All the masters say this. Nobody dies. That's the picture. That's the illusion. That's the game. It's not human beings having a spiritual experience. It's spiritual beings having a human experience. And then going on to the next one. So nobody's dying. So, it's our conditioning that makes that loss such a painful thing. And what makes it is we're conditioned to think it should be different. Back to the original statement. We think things should be different. We're so conditioned to... It should all wind up with the white picket fence and a nice chunk in the bank for retirement money and plenty of money to travel and stuff like that, and lots of grandkids. And nobody should die. Absolutely nobody in my knowledge, and none of my friends, parents, relatives, in-laws, children, nobody should die. And that's what I require to be happy. I want nobody in the universe to die, except the bad guys. Now, what's this guy in Afghanistan? He died, but none of my relatives. How absurd that is. But that's what it requires to make me happy, according to my conditioning.
What kind of feelings does, say, Robert or one of these masters have? Do they have any type of emotion? I know we're not, emotion's totally not good, but there's certain things that, certain wants that, where you set goals for yourself, and it carries you, some of those, for me anyways, being completely in humanhood, they're goals that I set for myself to strive for. It gives me something to be excited about, or to work hard and feel an accomplishment, or whatever those case might be. Do they have anything like that? If they don't care if people are coming in and out of their lives, do they have goals? Do
No.
they? it's a very just, it doesn't sound like a very exciting from somebody who's just starting this process.
Right, and it's not an exciting life. It's a blissful life.
Is the trade-off so great?
Yes, infinitely great. Robert certainly has no emotion. But he has great love, infinite love, great compassion, and great bliss. And it's inconceivable to the finite mind what that's like.
Does he work? Does he travel? I mean, does any of that come into the picture at all? Any of that?
You know, he would say that, first of all, I'll tell you, does he work? Robert died 3 years ago at 68 years old, and he did not yet have a Social Security number, which shows you how in the system he was. He obviously never had a paying job in his life. That's always my favorite thing about him, is that he did not even have a Social Security number, never had one, so he never had a paying job. And yet, all his needs were taken care of. What was the rest of that?
Did he travel?
Did he travel?
Sure.
Did he have a family? I mean,
He had a wife and 2 daughters. He traveled to India to be with, traveled to India 3 times to hang out with other gurus and people. He traveled all over the world. He had students in Korea, he had students in Japan, he had students in India, he had students in Wyoming, but he had no plans. I mean, he went wherever he went. He watched it unfold. See, there was no ego there at all. So Robert was not capable of deciding, I want to do this. It's not possible for Robert to want to do something because there was no Robert. There was just this, always this awareness of the fact that there's only one. Robert did not see himself as any different from you. You too are that one, Robert would say. And Robert would watch your body doing whatever it does, and Robert would watch his body doing whatever it did, and he would be absolutely unconcerned about either one, because neither one of them had anything to do with either him or you, from his viewpoint.
this is just me planning.
Sure.
Trying to get a picture.
Oh yeah, and we all do. And you know, that's why we're here, is to talk about the inconceivable. And I find that, you know, as my life and my understanding progresses, that all that diminishes and diminishes and diminishes. You know, I have no plans. I have no ambitions. I have no goals. More and more, I just wake up every day and wonder what's going to happen today, you know. And the reason I'm always comfortable is because I don't give a shit. But it's not a negative sense of I don't give a shit. It's like, you know, anything that happens is going to delight me. I will probably go to the morning meeting tomorrow, and because that's what I generally seem to do in the morning. And I will undoubtedly be delighted to be there and be delighted at all the stuff that's going on there, because just about everything delights me now. But it's from the position of watching it, not from having a plan, you know. If I had any idea at all about how I thought that meeting ought to go tomorrow, I would be disappointed, you know, and there would start my day of suffering and worry and things not going my way. You know, the minute I have a way, it cannot go my way. I introduce the possibility of it not going my way. I'm always amazed at the talk about on the freeways, you know, people cutting people off, you know, people are always cutting me off, they say, you know, and that never happens to me. And you know, I finally realized it's that I don't see it that way. I don't think it's my way. You know, am I in your way? No, I don't have a way. You know, how can you be in my way? You know, it's not my way. It's the way. You know, I mean, I don't have any my way. So So that's the change that I'm watching happen slowly with me. With Robert, it happened very fast, but with me, it's been, but it clearly is progressing.
I know on Barbara's case, she said it took her over 19 years or something. Isn't that something like that before she got completely out of her humanhood, so to speak?
It took her at least 19 years.
No, I thought that was amazing because you walk in and think that you need to get it done in about a year.
Yeah, but the point is that I mean, with Robert, it happened in 10 minutes. With Joel, it happened in 10 minutes. It can happen just like that. So you don't know how long it's going to take. And the other thing is that, as we're, let's say it's going to take you 30 years, the work you do each year, the work you do in any given minute has an immediate effect on your life, on your consciousness. You never have to make those mistakes again. You never have to have those false ideas again. That stuff is gone and your life improves. Your comfort in your life improves. The exterior picture itself may not change, but your attitude towards it changes and your comfort changes, and the amount of suffering that Buddha is talking about diminishes, as a result of every step you take. So, the fact is that, hello, now you can go out there, go out there and get it. There's 16 of them out there. So as you do the work, I mean, it all gets better, So it's not like we have to do all the work before we get any benefit of it, I mean, who cares whether it gets done this lifetime or next? That's just one more thing we think we know how it ought to be or how we want it to be. It's just one more goal that's tying us to our humanhood, wanting it to end. Wanting to become enlightened is a deterrent. Because wanting to become enlightened is establishing the fact that there's a me and establishing the fact that I'm not enlightened. And those two things are preserving my state of unenlightenment. There's really a bind at every level. So all you can do is watch it unfold and hear what you hear, and get what you get. And if you ever really get that, then it's done. Then you stop wanting to be enlightened. You stop doing anything, but you just watch it unfold.
When I say that, there is no me, it's so comforting.
Mm-hmm.
It's one of my favorites.
Yeah, more and more as you get the sense of that. From Robert's viewpoint, his body was doing things all the time. I mean, you can't stop doing things because sitting there and refusing to do something is doing something. Okay, so we can't stop doing things. But we can stop the decision process. We can stop being the doer, is what Robert would say. He would say, I'm not the doer. That's the picture doing what it is. That's the, the body is doing whatever it came here to do, and the body is going to do whatever it came here to do, and it has nothing to do with me. Robert's body apparently had Parkinson's disease, and it was so clear to me all the time I was with him that Robert didn't have Parkinson's disease, that body did, but it had nothing to do with Robert. Be quiet for a couple of minutes. It's also perfectly fine to talk about script stuff or kid stuff or relationship stuff here if you want to. Any of that kind of stuff is fine. It's just a forum in which to talk about anything that's going on in any of the work that we're doing.
With these new classes and listening to different spiritual principles, I've found that my kid has, become frightened, or that it, just mass confusion and screw it anyways, there is no will, or what does it matter, and, just all kinds of confusion, and almost turning back to, like, wanting to, say drink, or wanting to get to overeat, and kind of reverting back to, I guess, the fear. Is it better to step back at that point, or,
Step back in what sense?
Go back to what I know. Okay, so be of service and do the simpler level of spirituality, and say, well, screw it. I can't hear this other stuff because it doesn't make sense, and I have no purpose. And why would I do Why would I do anything? And it doesn't matter. And it just go back to.
Because of people that are in that state. You got here a few minutes late, you told me you were going to, but that's what I said at the start, is that people are in limbo because the stuff that they had believed has been torn apart, and the new stuff isn't here yet. The tried and true stuff from AA, it always works. I mean, that is tried and true stuff, and it's good sound spiritual principles, and getting out of yourself by being of service is never a mistake. The reason you're so uncomfortable is that you did hear this stuff. You said that, I'm not ready to hear this stuff, I can't hear this stuff yet, but the problem is that you did hear it, and that's why you're so uncomfortable. And there is a period of discomfort when the old is being torn apart and the new is not yet been found. It's that period of being in the hallway. You're in the hall now, the door is closed, and there's no other door apparently opening, but you can't get to the next room until you get out of this room, so that's just part of the process, and it's not comfortable. Certainly do whatever you have to do to keep from drinking or doing food or doing whatever addiction you do. You don't want to go there, but it never works to. You can try to go back, there's no reason not to. But you have heard it, and if it made no sense to you, you would not be here. If it hadn't struck a chord within you, you would not be here asking me about going back. You would have thrown it away. So, trust the process. But that's a fine answer. I mean, be of service, get out of yourself by doing whatever types of things you can do that we've been taught to do. It is always the right answer. Get out of yourself and let this settle in. You don't have to figure it out. You don't have to reason it. You don't have to change your practices. Robert never suggested that anybody stop meditating or stop praying or stop doing anything. Continue whatever spiritual practices have been working for you. But your mind is open now so that you can see more.
I used to just go over to Diane's when I first started and just cry. I mean, she just tell me it's real normal, it's just breaking it down. That was really scary.
Mm-hmm. It's always painful to grow spiritually. I mean, there's two ways of growing spiritually. One is you get led to a class which tears down the old beliefs and to make room for the new ones, because that's what growing spiritually is. Or the other way is that you painfully discover that your old beliefs don't work, and they get torn down for you, and then you go to make the room to and set out to find new things. I mean, we got sober only after it was demonstrated to us very painfully that doesn't work anymore. And that made the room for the new stuff. I'm talking about my own case anyway. I hung out there for 18 years trying to make it work, and very painfully, until I finally accepted the fact that my premise didn't work. I was not going to be able to do this on my own. I wasn't smarter than you guys. I didn't need doing this. The idea that there was no God wasn't going to work. All my arrogant attitudes weren't working. And I had to see that they weren't working, and now I'm available, now I'm teachable. And then I could come into AA and I could hear and find a God and start down this path, or start down the next stage of this path actually, but it looked like start down a new path. But that's always the case, that we have to. We can't get the new. It would be very nice if we can get this whole new concept of God and say, yeah, wow, look at that, and that's really beautiful. I don't think I'm going to do this one anymore. Because as long as we've got this one, we can't see that one. Gotta go. And you're in the void. And then comes the new one. And that's really why we're talking about the kind of thing we're talking about tonight. About, we're not talking about questions about what God is tonight, or whether you should pray or not pray, or meditate or not meditate, or anything like this. We're pointing out some much more practical things, which are also the quickest, or as quick a way as any, to gaining the new understanding. And that is, a change of attitude, which says, going to tomorrow wondering what's going to happen rather than hoping something's going to happen. Simple, practical truth that will make tomorrow go better. That's a lot of what's going on here now, tonight. If I'm wondering what's going to happen tomorrow, I'm not going to be disappointed. So don't get locked up in trying to figure it out either. Watch it unfold. It's all going exactly where it's supposed to go, and you're here because you're supposed to be here. Everybody that's here is because they're supposed to be here, and that's because we're supposed to hear what we're hearing tonight, as much of it as we hear. Everything is unfolding exactly as it should.
Anything else you can say about that process of seeing it clearly?
I wish I could. If I could give that to people, it would be solid gold. What I know is that's what works. And for me, I remember several times that I've seen things clearly. All my kid work got done in 5 seconds as a result of clearly seeing that everybody had been doing the very best they could all my life, and that included me as a kid and everything else. And the kid heard the great forgiveness all the way to the bottom of his toes, and it dropped. I also remember in India, walking from my hut down by the river to the ashram, and trying to get it, and reading this Rajneesh book. I'm going to the ashram where he is, but I'm reading this book on the way. This is how hard I'm trying to get it. And I walk this I guess maybe a half mile, 3/4 mile path, every day down and back. And I'm reading this book, and I got all the way through the book. And I just knew that the answer was in this book. And so I just went back to the start and started through it again. And went all the way through it again the second time. And this is over several months. And I'm back and I'm starting through it again. And I'm about halfway through it the third time. And I read something. And I got it. And my reaction is always, oh, fuck. I got it. And threw the book away, said, oh, fuck, and quit trying to do anything and went and sat down in the garden, and spent the next 2 months in the garden. Somebody came to me and says, hey, let's go to Kathmandu. And my answer is, why? Why would anybody possibly want to go to the Kathmandu, up in the Himalayas? I'm sitting here in the garden, and I really got it. Whatever it was I got that day. And I've subsequently read that book, and there's nothing in that book. I have no idea why I got it, but I got it. I got it because I was 12 hours, 14 hours a day, reading, pursuing it, pushing. I would read the book, and then I would go sit and do an hour meditation, and then I'd be in lecture for an hour and a half, and then I'd do another hour of meditation, and then I'd do Tai Chi for a while, and then I'd study Shiatsu, which is a meditative form of Shiatsu, for a while, and then we'd go do Tai Chi again, and so I was very intensely there, and little clicks happen like that. Other ones have happened. But for me, what I know is that we get it. And it appears to me that there are things we can do which increase the likelihood of getting it. But I don't know why people get it or when they get it or how they get it. It seems to be the frequency with which I get these clicks is usually relates to the intensity with which I've been doing spiritual practices. It doesn't appear to be true in Robert's case, but I suspect that's because he did so much spiritual practice in his last lifetime that he probably finished the work in the last lifetime and just showed up this lifetime for our sake, But I think the intensity of the spiritual practice is as likely to determine it as anything. It's like focus. It's whatever you want. Whatever's most important to you is what's going to happen in your life. It's a matter of priorities. If staying sober is more important to you than anything else, you'll stay sober. If you put that above everything else, you'll stay sober. If there's something above staying sober, we now have the situation where you may wind up losing that. I always love, the people that are having trouble getting sober, because they always have something more important than staying sober. And my answer is, oh, well, don't worry about it. They'll lose everything that's more important. Eventually staying sober will be the most important thing because they won't have anything left that was more important. It's self-correcting. The universe is self-correcting. All the lies will go away. So, the answer is, But why I have that intensity is pure grace. What did I do to deserve that? I was a drunk and a bum and everything for, when I got out of high school until I was 35. With absolutely no spiritual program at all. And then I, got sober got struck sober. And the first book that I was given to read by the guy I was talking to was a Joel Goldsmith book, and this huge thirst opened up in me. So, that's absolutely nothing but grace. Or perhaps work I did in a previous lifetime or something, which I have no information about. I have no idea about that, But, I was given the grace to put that first in my life, and it's always been first. And that seems to be working.
If wanting binds us to our humanhood, can you speak to the relationship between that and the principle of straightforwardness as it's being discussed as part of our relationship work. Because the definition of that we're given in that work is to ask for what we want.
Sure. The relationship work and the script work and the kid work is all very much about cleaning up your humanhood enough that you can get quiet to do this kind of work. You know, if you've got relationships, if your life is in a turmoil, the reason the 11th step is 11th is because you have to have done 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9 before you can get quiet enough to meditate. And you have to do 10 regularly to keep quiet enough to meditate, okay? So that's why the 11th step is 11. All right, now the script, kid, and relationship work is 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, and 9th step stuff. That's cleaning up your life enough that you can get quiet. You know, the reason that the script work came through is because Barbara's students were having the God experience and 15 minutes later throwing a tantrum because somebody didn't do something they liked, you know, and it was because, you know, they still had kid work to do. And if you want to be always comfortable, you have to do the kid and script work. And the relationship work is just another way of doing that. Relationship work is kid work. It's about discovering your kid, and then it's about giving up your resistance behaviors.
I'm not doing the relationship work, and my kids screaming, and I don't even know what that is.
Oh, yes, you
I
do.
know that I'm heading to some sort of
Oh, yes, you do.
that needs major attention. Joanne's already trying to get me started on just looking at it because I have a feeling that there's going to be a lot of work there.
Sure, for all of us. I mean, you know, this is just humanhood, and this is the stuff we have to give up, and that also is stuff we have to see clearly. I mean, you know, your scripts stop as a result of seeing them, of your kids seeing them clearly. I mean, you know, if you clearly see your script, it stops. But clearly seeing it doesn't mean intellectually, it means at the bottom of your kid. When your kid gets it, that it's a lie, I mean, nobody believes a lie. You know, if I know it's a lie, it doesn't affect me. So that, again, is a matter of seeing it clearly, you know. And all the stuff we talk about in the kid class is about how to see it clearly. The Byron Katie work is about seeing it clearly. The writing to the kid is seeing it clearly. The counterexamples is helping the kid see it clearly. It's all about seeing it clearly. Meditation, coming to the meditations and reading outside, reading Joel books and listening to Robert tapes, and all that helps you see it clearly. All that stuff helps see it clearly. Coming to classes like this helps you see it clearly.
Yeah, that was what Byron Katie was saying when we were at SARC. I think a confused mind has a confused life.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And we never slow down enough. We were sharing last night that when I first started meditation, I'd sit there and I'd close my eyes, and then before I knew it, I was in front of the computer and didn't even know how I got there. I mean, my mind was just so quick. It was just be doing the dishes. Wasn't I just meditating? It was just amazing.
And it goes to the point that when you're doing the dishes, you're doing them meditatively, or when you're sitting in front of the computer, you're in meditation. It goes to that point. You know, it goes all the way to the other end. But it takes paying attention, and it doesn't take a huge investment, but it takes a regular investment, you know. A little bit of work every day, and it will take over and it'll grow by itself.
I just got a hit that my plan is my resistance behavior. They're like one and the same.
Probably.
like double corroboration that gotta go.
Yep. The plan is certainly humanhood, and it's certainly trying to get something. And the reason we have a plan is to improve our what have you, or you know, become, or to gain respect, or to gain, you know, whatever it is we need. So it certainly is true.
I debated whether I should even say anything because I don't know if it's a question or what, but something I'm having difficulty with is my resistance. It's very clear that I have a resistance behavior, always the defensive mode. I mean, no matter what is said, and especially with shame, it's like, it's that kid is so quick to just be defensive.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't do, or it's no matter what, and it carries out in all areas.
Yeah.
And I'm like, this is the one where I'm not going to do it right, but it's such a block for me right now that it's so clear. He's always saying, and I've even had a patient go, well, geez, the defensive, and I'm like, it's so there, and I'm just stuck in the resistance behavior. And I'm trying to reassure the kid that I don't know if I'm missing anything, I guess is why I was sharing it.
Probably not. You're seeing it, and that's, you know.
Annoying.
Yeah, sure. You know, it was nicer to not see it. Yeah, so to speak. But that was going to go on forever. You know. Now, seeing it is an important first step, because seeing it now, you address it, and you address it with your kid. And you know what it is your kid. You know, there's a lot of possibilities, but you know, she's obviously insecure.
Right.
She obviously needs reassurance. So you're obviously on the kid's step. You know, reassurance is one of the kid's steps. Yeah, the work is in reassuring the kid that she's okay right where she is. Who she is and what she is okay. You know, that she's approved. The work is to work with your kid and let her know she's okay where she is. You're okay just exactly where you are. Because she has to understand that before she can move. But don't leave her there. You know, don't leave her there. And we're rearing the kids, not reassuring them where they are. We're reassuring them first, but that's in preparation to tearing down the false beliefs. The reassuring stage is just a short stage. It's what you do until you have sufficient trust that you can begin the work of tearing up the resistance behaviors, which means letting her know the truth. Many people in kid work tend to get locked into the reassuring stage, and they wind up with a 7-year-old for the rest of their life. And that's not what you want. What you want to do is get enough trust with a 7-year-old that you can tear down the foundation, show her the falsity of the belief that is sustaining her. But that's part, you're obviously in the middle 3 steps of kid work, which is a long-term thing, but you're obviously in the building trust part. It sounds like you're tolerating, but it sounds like you haven't done enough reassuring that she trusts you completely yet. Because she's being defensive. I didn't do it. Not my fault. Anything else? Now let's be quiet for another 2 minutes. Okay, thank you for coming.